I am the education coordinator for the Lombard Historical Society. But what many people don't know is I actually started my career here as a collections intern. And for about a year or so, I actually worked as a collections assistant for the society. And Jean Crockett is very fond of calling me the collections fairy. So even though I've transitioned into another role in the organization, I still really do love working with the physical objects of our history. And so I'm excited to get to share some of the things we don't necessarily always get out on display, and share a little bit about what goes into taking care of these objects, preserving them, for future generations, and a little bit about why we collect the things that we do. So as to not keep you guys in suspense, I'll go ahead and get started. I say you guys can't see it, but I do have an array of objects here in front of me, so I'll hold them up, get them close to the camera. If you have any questions, feel free, you can either pop them in the chat or you can feel free to unmute yourselves and ask them. I really want this to, be a fun conversation while we're here this afternoon. So working with collections, it's all the physical stuff that we have. So I specifically am really good at the 3D objects, and we take a lot of pride in making sure that we take care of them. So one of the things that I found, and if I go out of frame, that I think is really interesting is many of you may remember the Hammersmith Silos that used to be just, north of the tracks between Grace and Maine, which the building's no longer standing, but we actually have one of the bricks from those silos. And while it is reversed in the camera, it does say Hammersmith Lumber and Fuel Company, 1926 to 1989, which is when the building closed. So we are able to use these objects to talk about, the Hammersmith family, the impact that they had on Lombard, but also talk about the, the story of Lombard's industrialism and how, we really are, a working class town at our heart, with the railroad. One of the things that you can kind of see as I move this brick back and forth, you'll notice that it is a lot shinier than your normal brick. And that is because to preserve it, we actually sealed this brick. I don't know if any of you guys have ever walked on a crumbling brick path or seen some bricks crumbling. And, for an average building that's still standing or an average path, you go get another brick and you replace it. But obviously with the things that we collect here, there's no going out and getting another one. They're all unique pieces. So this is one of the things that I really like to use to show that, yes, it's a brick, but it is so much more than having a brick. And that's why sometimes the things we have in our collections, don't always make sense on the surface level. One of the things when we get new objects, we make sure to get as much information about the person who's giving it to us, as well as, the object itself. Sometimes we do a better job of that than others. So one of the things we also have from some of the earlier days of Lombard is we have a really nice coin bank. So I know it's reversed. It says Lombard State Bank, Lombard, Illinois. And you can see it actually has a slot up in the top. And it does have a keyhole. And we do have the key still today. So I am able to open this up. And there's nothing in it today. Whoever owned this took their hidden treasures out of it. But, this really, it does look like, a book. It's got a really nice cover. It is actual leather that is bound. But we don't really have a lot of information on whose particular bank this was. So was this someone who was saving their pennies, a child saving their pennies so they could go down to the corner store like Fleege's and buy candy? Or was this someone who was saving money for a child, the things that are coming, next steps in their lives. So some of the things we don't always get the full story, but we definitely try and, think about the possibilities and figure out what do we know about them. So we're able to do research on when the banks handed out these types of coin banks, as well as, when they were popular in the world or in that era, and really make sure that we're trying to preserve them. You'll notice that I have, these are nitrile gloves. And so this is standard practice for taking care of collections. We really want to make sure, like I said, that we're preserving them for future generations. And so a lot of the things that we specifically collect here with the Lombard Historical Society is we are specifically looking for things that are related to Lombard. So one of the collections we have is we actually have some of the fire department. So this is one of, I believe this is an arm shield from our Lombard, volunteer fire department. So I'll get that closer to the camera, and you can see that the shield is really interesting. I think it's really pretty. And for a while, Lombard and Glen Ellen shared a volunteer fire department district, which was responsible for obviously protecting our homes from fire. These were donated by Mr. Robert Charland. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who I know was part of the volunteer fire department. And so whenever people choose to, donate their things that are really important to them, we recognize that it is a big decision to turn over sometimes family heirlooms, items that have defined, in this case, someone's career. And really, we're honored that people choose to entrust us to safeguard and preserve their objects for future generations, and that they see the value in, what we do here at the Lombard Historical Society. Some of my other favorite parts of this collection is we do have some of the shields. So I believe this one was in this shoulder patch, but you can tell that the person took a lot of care because it's obviously very shiny, and they took the time to polish and make sure that they were taking care of it. And we also have an assistant chief's badge as well. So we're able to learn a lot about what firefighting in Lombard looks like from, the fact that it says VFD. So we know that it's a volunteer fire department, and we're able to share that kind of story. So a lot of times working in collections and working in museums in general is a little bit like being a detective. I said that when people bring stuff to us, we really like to sit down and have a conversation with them, and learn about the stories behind the pieces. Or if we're not able to do that, we do ask for people who donate things to write down the stories, because we want to be able to tell them in their words to everyone. So that way, as we decide in the future that we're going to do an exhibit on firefighting here in Lombard, we have those accounts from people to share them. That's the ideal. It doesn't always happen. I remember probably about a year and a half ago now, outside of our gift shop right now, there is a, what is that? That is a sharpening stone, one of the ones that you would see in like a blacksmith shop, where it's the huge round wheel that they would turn it, use it to sharpen knives. I always think of it what you would think of like a sword or an axe, most likely probably hatchets for this area. But it just appeared one day. We had, it was funny, our former director, Sarah Richard, I was in before her, and as I'm only in a few days a week, I looked at it and thought, oh, that's cool. Someone dropped this off. I don't know anything really about it because I haven't been in for a few days. It's totally fine. Someone will tell me, later. And then Sarah Richard called me and she said, what's this thing out here? Do you know anything about it? So it turned out between the time she left the day before and the time she got it, that I got in, someone left us this artifact outside and we don't know anything about it. And because we didn't have that conversation with the person, we can't really tell the story. I can tell you what it is. I know it's a sharpening stone, but I don't know, did it come here from Lombard? Is it something that has a really cool, important story? Was it found, for example, did the Pecks at one point own it and it went through the Peck descendants, and they decided to donate it to us? I know it's not from the Peck family because they're very good about telling us certain things, but those are the kind of conversations that sometimes we have as detectives of, well, we're going to be able to use this as an example, but unfortunately I can't tell you, the really cool stories. And so with us being caretakers for these objects, one of the things we look to do is make sure that we're preserving them for future generations. So what I actually have in my hand here is film reel. And it is, in that old canister, it's got, I forget exactly which millimeter it is, but it's one of the old school ones. So I won't open it up because we want to make sure that we're protecting the film inside and not necessarily exposing it to light as much as possible. But we know that we have this footage, and this is of the fire department actually doing a controlled burn on a house, so that way they can teach future firefighters how do you save a house that is massively burning down. But we don't want to lose this footage, so we actually worked with digitizing this footage. We worked with Tim Frakes of Tim Frakes Production Inc., and we have this footage that we're able to share in a digital format. So now I don't have to worry about trying to find the technology of a projector, which I would have needed before. I can share this image without worrying about then degrading the film inside. So we actually have this footage on our YouTube channel, so I highly recommend checking that out at some point. But those are really the goals of collections work, is seeing what do I have and what can I preserve, and seeing what stories I have. One of my favorite pieces that we have here is, it's kind of hard to see, I'm going to block my face for a second. This is actually a print of the town of Lombard. It is one of the things used to make some of the plats. And this was found in the Jersa barn. So when they were cleaning it out, they found it. And it's kind of hard to see. There it is, up in this corner. It's backwards. And it's difficult to see even in person, but it does say Lombard. And it tells us that this is going to be, it's a little worn out, unfortunately, at this point, but it does have the street names in it. And it gives us kind of some of that original platting type of view, which I really think that, as this barn was getting taken down, that this is a really cool piece that we were able to find in there and share. And because we have information on the Jersa family, we're able to build out some of those stories more. So this is a really fun piece that we have in our collection. And I will say I am partial to it because this is one of the first pieces I worked on as an intern. So it definitely has a special place in my heart. One of the other pieces I worked on is, caught my glove, is this. Now, with taking care of the things in our collections, it's also about making sure that we package and store them correctly. So this is, so I'm going to go ahead and unpack this. This is actually a knife. Now, one of the things I did as an intern was I went through, and of course I tied it really well in my gloves, make it hard to untie. But one of the things I did as an intern here is I went through and I inventoried the kitchen in the Victorian cottage, because the records that we keep in collections are really important. You want to make sure that you know what you have and you know where it is. Sometimes the challenges of small and large museums is making sure that you keep your inventory accurate. So this is a cleaver. It is fairly dull today, so I'm not really worried about it hurting myself. But this was just kind of sitting on a shelf, completely unwrapped. And so we wanted to make sure that as we, were moving forward and moving this back into our collection, this would be a very common knife type used in cages both in the Victorian era and the Pioneer era and today, that people would be safe handling the collections. So that's why you'll notice I had the blade wrapped up, so that way, even though it is dull, in case you had someone who accidentally reached for the blade first, which of course is not good knife handling etiquette, but you never know, that there would be no risk of injury to the person handling the knife as well as to the knife themselves. Because sometimes collections are not, they are safe, but sometimes there are things in them that are less safe than other items. So for example, one of the collections I worked with earlier in my career was a taxidermy collection. And one of the pieces was a taxidermy bald eagle that we actually had to keep wrapped in a garbage bag because it was from the 1920s. And in the 1920s, taxidermy was done with arsenic. Can't put it on display. Unfortunately, it costs too much money to do the restoration work necessary to make it safe for people to handle. So at that point, the best thing was to keep it covered, keep it out of people's hands, because as we learned, collections management is just in preservation is like any other career. As we move forward in time, sometimes things change. And you'll also find that sometimes you get things that still have the liquid in them. So this is actually from, let's see where, from, you can see Bradley's drugstore here in Lombard, and it does still have the liquid inside. This is a special liniment for rheumatism, neuralgia, lameness, backache, stiff neck, etc. And the directions say to rub freely into the affected parts. So I'm assuming that probably what's in here is some oil, probably some topical medicine, nothing that will outright harm you, but we would never open this bottle today. One, since there is no actual instruction or, ingredient list, I am just making an educated guess as to what is in here. And I'm not entirely sure how those ingredients have aged over time. Obviously, this is an older bottle. Bradley's does no longer exist today, and so I'm not going to take that risk. I don't know if it's going to have fumes when I open it. I don't know if it's just going to be something that has morphed into something that is harmful. So it's really cool that we're able to see what the liquid looks like. I also don't know if this was the original color of this liquid, which is always a little worrisome. But it's really, I like these kinds of pieces because it's interesting to see how, the past has changed from the present. And especially in the way of medicine. This is another one of the pieces that we have that comes from Bradley's, which would have had a soda counter in there as well, I believe. And this is a Citro brand cordialized bourbon tight syrup. So it came from the Citronesia Co. Here in Chicago. You can see it's got the stopper in it still. And I don't know if you can see it. There is sediment in the bottom. And so this is another example of things that probably wouldn't hurt you if you opened it. I mean, it's literally just sugar water with some preservatives in it, I'm pretty sure, because I'm surprised that there's no bacteria growing on it, but it's definitely not something that I would open up today. And things like these, because we don't know how the light will react with them, are not things that will go on exhibit because is it their main, it is, let's see, with this one doesn't have Bradley's on it, but it is their Main Street address. So they're 11 North Main Street. But yeah, as I was saying, these, yeah, Yeah, that is right. I forgot that they were on Main Street and then moved to St. Charles. Yeah. These, and I believe that these all came from the same person, is how with our numbering system. But because, like I was saying, I don't know how the light would react to them. So me having it out here for, the hour or so to talk with you guys, it's totally fine. Me keeping it out on exhibit for people to see for we typically put our temporary exhibits out for about 3 months at a time. I don't know what that would do to the liquid inside. And I want to make sure that people who come to my museum obviously are safe and not going to a chemistry lab. Yeah, and you can see there's sediment all around here. So these are definitely, yeah, and this one is from their St. Charles location. It says there. So we have a mix in this collection. Also in this one is the Sleepy Mineral Water, which it's kind of hard to, the label is faded, but this one is also still very full, as well as the light calcinated magnesia, which is, this one is from North Main Street as well. But you can see we definitely have come a little bit of ways from which products we are using to take care of ourselves today. And we rotate the things that come on and off of exhibit. For example, one of the things that used to be on exhibit in the house is this set of sleigh bells. So this actually, I believe, hung in the Victorian cottage for a while. And this is an example of what a horse or team would have used, especially during winter time. And this is one of the ways that as we take records of things, it's important to note their condition over time. So our original intake records shows that there is only one of the bells is actually missing when it was originally purchased. But obviously you can see today there are two. So that's one of the challenges of working with older objects. We do have the bell, is that especially as things which are on display for a while, you have to balance and give them time to rest. So if I was to leave the sleigh bells out on exhibit for forever, we would see, yeah, I'm not sure if they're the ones he used during his sleigh rides. They very well could be. I unfortunately don't know the story too well. So that's one of the things that in those collection records, they wrote down the condition of them. So I knew that, the second bell came off after we got it, but that the first bell was not there originally. Here, I'm going to step out of frame just for a second so I can grab one of my binders. Let's see which one is. Yeah. So we have a couple of different ways that we keep the collections records. So this lovely thick binder, this is for years 2010 through 2013. And I have paperwork for everything that comes through our doors. And so with the numbering system that we have, which something that has a good number on it, I'm going to pick one of these. That does not have its camera. So you can see, so I hold it up, it's unfortunately backwards for you guys, but it has the year, the collection, and the number in the collection. So by looking at this number, I can identify that we got this object in 2013, that it is the 13th collection that I worked with that year, and that this is object number 7. So when I go to the records, especially for this, I know that I can get to 2013, which is going to be in the very back of my binder. I can look that this was the the 12th collection, or that one was the 12th collection. And then I can go to the last number, which is the gold Maltese cross. And it gives me information on who donated it. And we also, at this point, put in information about, who made it and what sort of stories we had. So that way, even if I look at an object and don't necessarily know the stories connected to it, I can look at the object and know where I can find that information. And then from there, we're able to see, we can cross-reference. Jean Crockett does an amazing job with helping us cross-reference. Currently, I'm in the archives, and off to my right, we just have file cabinets that's filled with the biographies of people in town, and all of those are cross-referenced with each other. So when I have pieces like my scout, my model of a scout, I believe this was from the Lilac. Yep, this is from the 1967 Lilac Parade. They won first place. It is the Cub Scouts. It has the display of American Indians on the back, and then the front, they made into a lovely visage that is just a little terrifying. But because I, with this, have the year, I'm then able to see what else I have. And one of the things that we have is we actually have photos then of the scouts who are in front of their parade float. And from there, I'm able to build out some of the story. So I'm able to look at who actually donated this. Potentially, we can learn more about the scouts who are there. And we can also see kind of differences between the float and the model I have. So we know that like the model says Carl on the side, and I'm able to, and I can't see that actually in the photos for whatever reason. Right under that ear, it would have said Carl. And I don't know the significance of that, but by having the year, it also tells me which troop packs are a part of this. So if I decide that someday I am going to do an exhibit, learn more about scouting in Lombard, I have a really good place to start and continuing to do that research. So our collections and collections in general are never the end point for anything. It's always, what can I learn about it, and how can I use this to better the community? Because, we are a community organization, and we want to make sure that this history is preserved for, as many people as possible. So we have some really cool things in our collection too. One of the things we have is obviously Little Orphan Annie is a big part of the Lombard story. So we do have an extensive Little Orphan Annie collection. One of my favorites is we have several different Little Orphan Annie dolls. So this one is, let's see, she has a tag on her. So she is from the 80s, or she was copyrighted in the 80s. So she's from at least the 80s. So not an original like run of Annie. And one of the differences we can tell is she has the pupils in her eyes, which if you look at a lot of the earlier versions of Annie, especially from the cartoon, she does not have the pupils. It's just the single kind of circle for her eye. But we know that Annie is such an important part of Lombard's story that we're able to show a lot of different examples. So should we choose to do another Annie exhibit or really focus on her, in addition to what we already have out, we're able to show a lot of the different types. One of the things that we make sure with how we collect things is we really only want 2 or 3 of each type. So, for example, we'll see a lot of people will have the exact same Annie doll. And one of the challenges of working with collections is my space is at a premium. So if I already have one version of the doll, it's really having that conversation with the donor about how their object would be used. So for example, someone was to come with the exact same Annie doll, it would be a conversation about, we really do appreciate you thinking of us. We can't preserve everything. And so that's one of the really hard struggles of working in a museum and preservation in general is that I want to save every single old thing, and I just don't have the space for it, which is really hard. So we really make sure to be very thoughtful and considerate about which pieces we collect, and we have policies about how we choose the objects and how we care for them. One of the pieces we also have in our little Orphan Annie collection is the Ovaltine Song. So as I was saying, you can see the difference here, how we know that this is from an earlier time, is that Annie does not have any pupils, which I won't lie, is sometimes a little, weirds me out a little bit, especially when it's in like a 3D doll form. She looks a little soulless to me at times if she's not smiling. And the same goes for Sandy at the bottom. But this is the Little Orphan Annie song that was made with the Ovaltine factory in mind. And we actually have the back, the notation is visible, and you can, let me see if I can get it closer. You can kind of see underneath my fingers that there is the person who used this wrote in the notation about which notes are which and how they need to sing or play them. So it's really cool to see how the pieces were used by people in their lives, to know that it is more than just an object when they come to us. That's one of the not struggles, but that's definitely one of the differences between a normal object and then something that is an artifact in a museum collection. Is once it is in possession of the museum, it takes on a different form of its life. So no longer is that Annie doll going to be someone's toy. It's instead going to live a different life as it is preserved. So that's why sometimes we see things that don't get used. They no longer necessarily go with their primary function. So one example is I had an intern a few years ago who we needed to clean the rugs out, and we were going to throw them over the laundry lines, and we were going to do it the old fashioned way and get rug beaters and really just, beat the dickens out of the rugs. And they went to go pull one of the old fashioned rug beaters off the wall. And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but it had one of our accession numbers on it, which means that even though that was designed and would withstand, being used to beat the dust out of a rug, because it's part of our collection, and because if it was to, break or sustain damage in any way, we are responsible for that, and we make sure that we are being good stewards of the things that are left to us that we collect. So, for example, I have a lovely Little Orphan Annie lunchbox with her classic catchphrase, "Leapin' lizards." And so this will, remain as a display piece and will no longer be used to keep any lunches cold. It's always finding the balance in how we care for things. Some of the other pieces that are really cool in our collection is one of the other focuses, rather, I should say, is we do have a focus, obviously, being the Lilac Village. We have a lot of lilac time things. So this is a laser etched ink block. So you can kind of see, it's hard to even see in person. So these are some of the lilac quartz. There is a tree in the background over here. And so this is in Lilacia Park. And this would be used to make prints. So they would actually be able to take ink, put it over the picture, wipe off a little bit of the excess, and they would be able to press it down onto paper, and it would reveal the image. Unlike a lot of other woodcuts that you would see from earlier forms of printing, this does not have the visible raised images. So how this works is they would actually take acid and very, very carefully pour it over the image, or rather the block, and that would be used to etch out the image. So that's one of the really cool things that we have in our collection that I really like. So our collection kind of ranges, obviously, from, a lot of the things we collect are the physical objects that are still in pretty good condition. We typically, if something is falling apart, that makes it less likely that we'll accept it into our collection, just because it takes a lot of time and money to necessarily save things that are in severe states of degradation. But our archaeological collection is the exception. So let me see. We have a few years ago, you might remember, this would have been probably 2017, before our Peck exhibit, we had foundation work done over at the Peck, where we completely redid the foundation on the east side in the east room. As for any of you who have visited there before, I don't know if you remember, you could drop a marble and it would roll down into the corner, and we went through and fixed that. And as the construction was going on, the company that we were working with was actually saving the things that they were finding. So we think that there was kind of like a midden, which is like a trash area, or potentially an outhouse, and that fell. But you can see, like, even today, some of these pieces are coming off in my hands. And so I think this is a railroad spike. It's certainly long enough and made of the right material. And these, like I said, are the exceptions to things that we will keep, because we know that they came, we obviously know that the Peck family is the only family who owned the original house. We can directly tie these objects to them. And we can use it to tell a little bit more of the history of the family that lived there and tell a little bit more of their story. One of my favorite pieces in that collection is this axe head or hammerhead. I'm not entirely sure with the wear, but you can see there is a hole for the handle to go through. It's a little bit rounder, or excuse me, it's a little bit stockier at this end. It's got more of a tapered edge over here. And so we're able to see that at some point this was used on the farm to help keep it going. And so it's a really cool point of history to be able to hold something like this in your hand and know that you're being connected to the family. And that's part of the reason we also have education collections. So when, I do field trips for schools, I really want to be able to give kids the opportunity to hold some of these things in their hands, because there's nothing quite like being able to say you were holding a piece of history. And so some of the objects that we look at that are either, for example, if I got another Annie doll that was exactly like that, I might put that in my education collection, because I have an example that I can use to save in perpetuity. But this way I'm able to let kids, families, the general public hold that one and have that experience of the tactile experience. Sometimes we put things in our education collection that are from the time period, but don't necessarily have the Lombard connection. And so I would be able to, replace them easier than if, say, I had a pen that was from Harold Gray that he used to create the Little Orphan Annie comics. That's not going to go in my education collection, but a pen that's just from the time period might, because I can get those. Those might have been mass produced, and I can get those much easier. And collections are living, breathing things, I like to think of. As history goes on, we will continue to collect. We don't necessarily just look at, we want to collect things from the Victorian era, because that's a really narrow focus for us. We are always looking to make sure we're telling as much as Lombard story as possible. And we're constantly getting new things into our collection. Just this past week, Keith Golden and the rest of the Mertz siblings excitedly, you guys are getting a sneak peek of this because this hasn't been announced yet. We have worked and we have gotten some of the Peck collections back to us. So the Mertz family are Peck descendants, and we were able to work with them. So one of the things that they very graciously have donated to us and allow us to be the caretakers are these are, I believe it is green snail shell buttons, and these were owned by Sheldon Peck's father. So these were originally from Vermont, and you can see that they are just in excellent condition. If I didn't know better, I would think that this would be something I could go out to buy at the store today. And so some of these pieces will be going on display at the Peck later this year. But this is just, really exciting to see that just because we know some of the story, there's always more to learn. So they have taken very good care of this. They have mounted this using kind of archival. They've put it in the shadow box to protect it for future use, or for future generations, I should say, not necessarily future use. And so this will be one of the pieces that we will probably for a while keep them in this context. Sometimes some of the pieces we do deframe, especially if the frame doesn't have any sort of context to it. If it's the original frame of an art piece, we will keep it in there. But if it's, for example, just like a framed watercolor that someone put in there 20 years after the piece was made, we'll probably take it out. And one of the other pieces that I will end with as I step out of frame is again from our new Peck collection. And this is Harriet Peck's cheese press. So Harriet, obviously being Sheldon's wife, we are going to be redoing one of the rooms in the Peck where we're going to be telling more of her story in there, which I'm really excited about because, we talk a lot about Sheldon, and Sheldon obviously has some very incredible accomplishments in his life, but he was not the homemaker. He was not the person who really made the homestead a home. He was off traveling, for his painting, as well as being, an agent of the Underground Railroad. But it was Harriet who held down the fort. She did, her and the kids did all of the manual labor at the farm, and really were the pillars of the community in that when they were there. And or rather than, not that Sheldon wasn't a pillar of the community, but they were, the stable foundation as Sheldon was constantly leaving. So it's really exciting to be able to have these pieces to tell more of the complete Peck story. And so we're always excited to share everything that we know, and we're really excited to be able to use the physical pieces that we have, because it's one thing for me to tell a student, we know that Harriet Peck made cheese. It's another to be like, here is her cheese press that she used to make the cheese. And how it would work is this rooster, we have established it's a rooster, would go face down, and then they would either tighten it or just press heavy blocks onto it to keep it, to create the imprint in the cheese. So being able to have this to say, here is the thing she actually used, is what makes collections really special and what I really love about them. I say this is really all that this tidbits that I have pulled for you today. Do you guys have any questions for me? Anything that I can answer, either about our collections, maybe upcoming, anything else that's going on at the Society? I'm really excited that you guys joined me this afternoon to be able to share this stuff with you. Because like I said, this is the stuff that everyone doesn't get to see. So it's always nice to give it its sun in the sign. Oh, thank you, Sandy. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Yes. One of the exciting things, I don't know if you guys saw, we did get a grant. So this building will go under construction later this year. And so we will be doing a collections move. And part of that is we're going to be getting brand new storage for pretty much everything. So we're really excited to be able to take care of the things even better than we already do. So that makes me very excited. All right. I say, does anyone have any questions, any comments, anything they want to talk about? I say it doesn't look like it. If you have any questions after the fact, my email is posted on our website, which is lombardhistory.org. If you're interested in learning more about how we care for collections or interested in helping in our collections, we are always looking for volunteers. Because, like I said, we will be doing a collections move to ensure the safety while construction is happening. So I'll definitely need volunteers for that. So if that's something that you're interested in, please let me know. And definitely keep an eye out for some of our upcoming events. We are obviously just around the corner from Lilac time, so we'll be doing tours daily at 11 a.m. We are asking for registrations ahead of time. We also, starting the 7th, are doing the virtual house walk this year. And so that will be May 7th is when the video will go live that you can watch from your home. And I know the first 200 people who register for that on the 7th will be able to pick up goodie bags, which are really cool. They've got some cool stuff in there. And then as well, the 8th, we are doing a virtual tea. And we're going to be talking about the Victorian language of flowers with me and volunteer Kim White. So keep an eye on a long list of other things happening this year. So definitely keep an eye on our website. And I hope that I see you guys again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you for joining me. Take care.